This is Putin's war 7 months on. I've been looking at this map every day, tracking this war that has led to 7 million people fleeing this country, thousands dead, including countless civilians. I want to show you what's going on, kind of in the macro, a time lapse of this war. And I also want to look at my predictions back at the beginning of the war.
Russian invasion of Ukraine.
What I thought this map might look like, and I want to compare it to how it's actually played out. I've been watching the video I made from right before the invasion, remembering a world where this hadn't happened yet. I'm not sure that he's going to invade tomorrow, but he very well could. So let me quickly get you up to speed on what 7 months of war has meant for Ukraine, to show you what the new strategy is for Russia, and who's actually winning this conflict.
Russian troops are moving in on the
taken by the Ukrainian forces fighting back.
Hey, pause really quick. I need to thank today's sponsor, and I'm quite excited actually because today's sponsor is Climate Power. There's a big thing happening in our country right now, which is that a new law was passed that is like the biggest, most significant climate impact law that is now the law of the land. It actually passed. It's a huge deal. And the reason why it passed, in part, is because of the pressure from young people. Young people who are going to inherit this earth are taking serious action to fight climate change. Luckily, this is just the beginning. Climate Power is an organization that makes it very easy for you to find out how to vote. There are over 8 million new young voters eligible for this midterm that's coming up, and most of them will not vote, just like based on the data. So please prove the data wrong. Make a plan to vote if you don't have one. Most states have like early voting. It's actually very doable, and it feels really good. Like it feels really good to vote and know that you're actually like fighting for change. Climate Power isn't selling you anything. Literally, it is there to make it super easy to register to vote, to find your polling places, to learn how to vote early if you want to do that, so you don't have to go to a polling place. In short, it makes it easier for you to have your voice heard as a young person who probably won't vote. There are a lot of candidates running who don't care about climate change, who don't think it's a real problem. And that's why this is important. It is so important that Climate Power is sponsoring today's video, and I am so on board with that. So thank you, Climate Power, for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. But seriously, the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act is the beginning. We have momentum. Let's keep it up. So go to votefuture.org to quickly register to vote and to find out what you can do to really affect this election. And check the links in my description that bring you to Climate Power, where you can learn more about what you can do to actually have your voice heard. Okay, let's get back to another very important global issue, the war in Ukraine. Okay, quick reminder that this invasion that happened in February was really just an escalation of a war that's been going on over here in the eastern part of Ukraine for 8 years.
The Russian military now being directly involved in fighting Ukrainian government forces.
Russian troops spreading out throughout the strategic Crimean Peninsula.
It was back in 2014 that Putin invaded and occupied and then annexed, which basically just means stole, this peninsula called Crimea. That sparked a war that has been going on in this region, the Donbas region, for 8 years, where Ukrainians who sympathize with Russia rose up trying to fight to become a part of Russia.
Вы хотите декоммунизации? Ну что же, нас это вполне устраивает.
And then, as we all know, earlier this year, I mean, you know what happened. Putin moved in from all sides, except for the West, of course. His big goal was to swiftly take the capital of Kyiv. You gotta take the capital if you want to win a war quickly. The scariest images at the beginning of the war, if you remember, were these 60-kilometer-long convoys of Russian military vehicles in these huge lines moving towards the capital. 60 kilometers long. I mean, these images were so striking. I frankly thought Putin was going to be victorious in this. I thought he was going to take the capital. But this plan very much did not work.
We are seeing the Russians slowly getting closer to Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces are continuing to hold their capital from the Russians.
This was Putin's first big miscalculation. He way overestimated his troops' ability and way underestimated the response of Ukrainians and the West, who pumped loads of weapons into the country to help them fight. Not only did the Russian army fail to take Kyiv, the Ukrainian army mounted a very effective counteroffensive and pushed Russia out of all of this territory in the course of just a few weeks. After this giant defeat, Putin calls all of his troops back to regroup and to focus on a more narrow front of the war. Sticking to over here, the plan was now to continue to liberate the eastern regions of the country that already had a lot of pro-Russian separatists who, again, had been fighting here for 8 years. And as the summer approached, I think this is where a lot of us, started to tune out, because the war turned into a long, protracted stalemate, with some occasional Russian gains and a few counteroffensive from the Ukrainians. The term we need to use here is war of attrition. Basically, who can wear down the other first through destruction and endurance. This is a horrible way to fight a war. And while Putin's attempt to take over Kyiv failed, he didn't fail in taking over other major population centers. Like here in Kherson, which was the first major city to fall to Russia after the invasion.
The battle for Kherson in particular is intensifying.
Watching how they treat their first conquered city is a really good indicator of what Russia's real goal is here. They didn't just occupy the city, they got busy turning it into Russia. They took down the Ukrainian flag and replaced it with a Russian one. They put up these creepy billboards with young children about Russia being one people and Russia is, quote, here forever, super on the nose on what they're trying to do. The brave people of Kherson gathered and protested, right next to Russian tanks, but that didn't stop the Russians from doing what they clearly had been planning this whole time. On May 1st, Russia announced that these people would start using the Russian ruple, the Russian currency. They seized control of the broadcasting and internet channels and stopped these people from being able to connect with the world. These events are a big deal because Putin said he was invading to liberate these people. A special military operation, not to conquer them. Putin was unable to oust the government and initiate a regime change to put in a government that would have been more friendly to Russia. So now, it looks like he's gonna try to gobble up the country from the east, piece by piece. And the key word here is annex.
Russia has launched an intense ground campaign to capture a key Ukrainian city in the eastern Donbas region.
Annex is a super benign, technical word, but it means to conquer land, to then occupy it, and then to just unilaterally declare that this land is a part of our sovereign territory. No treaties, no nothing. Just a unilateral land grab. So let's rewind to the beginning of the war. Watch how at the beginning it was all about this invasion from all three sides, a very aggressive invasion, again with the focus on the capital. But once Russia got kicked out of Kyiv, the war really starts to become focused on all of this. But Russia made progress. They took over all of these population centers here in the Donbas region. And by the end of April, it was starting to become clear what the next move was. It came out in Russian media in this report that a senior Russian military official said that the next phase of the operation was, quote, to establish full control over the Donbas and southern Ukraine regions. And then he says it point blank. He says that this will allow Russia to establish a land bridge from mainland Russia all the way to Crimea, this peninsula that Russia annexed in 2014. But why stop there? This Russian military commander then infers that the next part of the plan is to create that land bridge even further all the way to Transnistria, this little sliver of a pretend country that basically no one recognizes and that should be a part of Moldova, but that is full of Russian soldiers and a bunch of people who want Russia to annex them. Establishing this part of the land bridge would be pretty difficult because it would mean a battle in Odesa, which is Ukraine's third largest city. It'd be a horrible fight, so let's just hope that part of the plan does not come to fruition. But Russia has been successful in deeply establishing this land bridge between their country and Crimea. But to do that, they had to fight a very bloody battle in the port city of Mariupol.
We begin tonight with the battle for Mariupol.
The mayor of Mariupol is calling on residents to evacuate.
After an egregious few weeks, Russia finally took over the city.
Thousands of civilians remain in Mariupol.
So yeah, that's the phase of the war that we are in right now. More and more evidence is mounting that Russia isn't just planning to occupy and liberate these people, but to actually annex them to be a part of Russia. US intelligence reports claim that Russia is installing Russian officials to lead these cities and regions. They're creating these fast tracks for Russian citizenship and making it so that all new babies born in these regions are automatically Russian citizens. Any day now they're gonna hold fake elections to gauge if the people want to be Russian. And when you look at the results, you're gonna see that somehow a ridiculously giant number of people voted yes. This is their annexation playbook. They've done it before and it's worked. And it looks like they're doing it again.
Annexation by force would be a gross violation of the UN Charter, and we will not allow it to go unchallenged or unpunished.
But the Ukrainians are fighting back. They have not surrendered to this army that is way more powerful than they are. As we're making this video, there is a giant counteroffensive happening up here. And and the Ukrainian army is taking back huge swaths of land. The New York Times pointed out that Ukraine captured more territory in a week than Russia had captured in 5 months. And if you watch the videos of the Ukrainian soldiers liberating these cities, it's pretty emotional. And if we're looking at the map thinking strategically, it's an important reminder of what the spokesperson of the U.S. National Security Council said.
And we would remind Mr. Putin that over time may prove unable to hold this territory.
And this gets to the last point I want to make here. I'm here to argue that he's already lost. Back at the beginning of this war, I made this prediction thinking that Putin was going to be successful in taking the capital and overthrowing the government. All logic pointed that he was capable of doing that. But he clearly did not. I was wrong. Instead, Putin has been able to control a few strips of land in the east and the south. He's got his land bridge to Crimea, and he may keep going. But again, Putin's war, the motive and the goal is based on some pretty giant delusions, chief among them, that he is liberating these people who are ready to come back to the Russian flock. That is not what is happening. And we have 7 months worth of war to prove it.